Preschoolers need to ask a lot of questions. They're busy forming beliefs, testing reality, and developing a sense of purpose in their lives. In this episode, we'll see how our true purpose was misshaped as we adapted to rigid family system roles. We'll discuss the devastating effects of sexual abuse and emotional incest, and you'll write Mom and Dad a letter expressing your unmet preschooler needs. Good day, folks, and welcome to the show. We're talking about reclaiming our inner child. We've been looking at infancy and toddlerhood in past programs, and today we want to look at the preschool child, the period from about 3 years old to 7 or 8. This is a crucial period in the formation of early identity. And I'm going to show you another index of suspicion. Again, this is a guideline to help you take a look at whether you may have issues around this developmental stage. See, to me, it's enormously important to realize that we had infancy needs, we had toddler needs, we had preschool needs, we had school-age needs. There's not one inner child in there. There's all these different developmental stages. And so we can learn how, and especially when we get to the programs on championing, how to repair that, how to do corrective experiences, and how to fine-tune your work, your own recovery, your own journey to wholeness, so that you can make up for those deficits. A lot of my sort of craziness in my life was about just learning deficits, just things that I didn't know how to do. A lot of relationship problems are about learning deficits, and you're going to see that very much in this particular program, because what really starts happening here is children begin to really start getting in touch with their feelings. What children need more than anything, they need a model. Here's how. Here's how to be a man. Here's how to be a woman. Here's how to be a human being. Here's how to interact. Here's how to be intimate. I can't imagine anybody in my generation, I'm 57, can't imagine anybody in my generation seeing a man and woman who were absolutely equal. You cannot be intimate except on the basis of equality. And so most of us are growing up in families where we don't see intimacy. We see hierarchies of power. Whereas intimacy is about shared power. The democratic revolutions, the French and the American revolutions, were revolutions that are bringing us to the awareness that we're beginning to get clearly right now, that every human being is equal, and every human being has rights, and that you can only predicate intimacy on the basis of equality. So you have trouble identifying your feelings. You don't know what you feel, because nobody modeled feelings for you. How could you name a feeling if nobody ever named it for you? Sometimes people think it's crazy when they've grown up without this, when they hear therapists saying, you say to the child, I see you're feeling angry. You know, when they're obviously stomping around the kitchen. But it's enormously important. How would I know how to name? I'm going to talk a little later on about abuse. Children don't know what abuse is. Children don't even know they're being abused. How could they know it? All they know is what's happening to them. Interpersonal communication problems. Think about your mom and dad here. How well did they communicate? How well did they ask, for what they wanted and listen to each other and do active and passive listening? What I hear you saying, Jack, is. What I hear you saying, Jill, is. And here's concrete, specific behavioral detail. Yeah, I mean, now, in all fairness, who would they have learned it from? I keep talking about these survivalistic models that we come out of. So, difficulty expressing, no talk, no feel rules, responsibility for the reality of others. This is what I'm going to call toxic guilt. You don't think you have a right to your own life. You don't think you have a right to your own health. Your family's still all messed up and you're doing real well and you feel guilty all the time. As I see a lot of you grinning. It's like, see, toxic guilt is a thin veneer of codependency. It's like, I don't have a right to separate. And I'm going to show you in a minute when we look at that family system. In fact, what we're doing in these programs is expanding that work I did on family systems. So you can see more specifically how families that have high levels of dysfunction, you can't get your needs met. So you can't grow up. You remain an adult child. That's the whole meaning of adult child, is that you couldn't grow up because you couldn't get your needs met. You act on guesses and unchecked assumptions. You mind read. You've been operating for 2 weeks on an assumption that you never checked out. All you needed to say is, are you angry, Harold? Are you angry, Mary? That's all we needed to say. But we never checked it out. I'm going to give you an example from my own life. I'm in Vancouver recently, being interviewed by the TV station in Victoria, and I cannot quite hear the questions, but I am answering them. This is what I call an outbreak of codependency. See, because I'm so nice. I'm in my nice guy act. I'm in this false self now, who I'm going to be so nice, I wouldn't even tell him I don't hear the questions. So God knows what was going on, you know. But responsible for your parents' happiness, you have to go home for Christmas. You live here, but you have to go home for Christmas because Dad would have heart palpitations again. Or you go to church when you go home, so they'll be happy that they did a good job with religious education. Oh, some of you are shaking your head. See it like this means you didn't get to leave. You didn't get to leave the family. You're still taking care of their happiness. Now, I'm not in any way encouraging people not to go home for Christmas or to their home of origin or have relationships with their parents, but it may be very important for you to have your own life and have your own traditions and have your, you have a right to your own life. You didn't come into this world to make your mom and dad happy. And maybe what you're doing doesn't make them happy. It's your life. What I do is me. For that I came, the poet said. I quoted you that Hopkins in a previous program. What I do is me. For that I came. And that's the important thing. So I want to look just for a second at a healthy family. Now, I spent a whole series with you on this. Not with you, but with a viewing audience. And I just want to review quickly. The most important thing for a healthy family is a good relationship between husband and wife. Let's hope this husband and wife are not adult children. Let's hope that while nobody's perfect and that their relationship requires hard work, because love is hard work, it requires giving time, attention, and direction. That is, it requires time and attention. It requires commitment. But let's say that they're working on their relationship, that each one will let the other one in communication, but each one of them has a good boundary. They have good boundaries. And I said over and over again in the family series that the marriage is the most important part of the system. Remember, families are systems. They're like mobiles. If you touch one part, all the parts. So Jack marries Jill, that's a family. Jack and Jill have John, that's 2 families. Jack and Jill have John and Barbara, that's 3 families. John leaves, that's 4 families. Jill leaves, or Barbara leaves, that's 5 families, and now you have Jack and Jill. So what's the most important relationship to work on in that family? Jack and Jill. And what every family needs is, Whitaker said this, it's one of the famous statements in family system, a generation gap. Every family needs a generation gap. These kids need to get it that the most important person to dad is mom, and the most important person to mom is dad. That they are important and they are valued, but in my belief, children cannot be intimate with parents because you can only be intimate on the basis of equality. Children can be close to parents, but when parents start getting intimate with children, there are problems, and I'm going to talk about that in just a minute, what we're going to call parent-child coalitions, the spousification of children, enormously damaging thing for children. So it's very important that these children be able to do what children are supposed to do, to learn, to be curious, to have good modeling, to have good models up here from mom and dad, that they can see that they have a relationship, and that the kids have a life, and there's modeling, they give time, they give attention, they give direction, and they're there as best they can to meet these children's developmental needs. Good families have rules, and in healthy families you can make a mistake. People aren't going to cream you for making a mistake. These roles will be flexible. It won't always be authoritarian and dad sits in his chair and no one can ever talk to him. Or watch out, be careful of your father, something, and everybody's walking on eggs. That dad's somebody you can bond with. Wait till you see the piece of videotape that I'm going to show you of an exercise from a workshop, and everybody's sharing after they write this letter to their parents. You're going to hear, my father wasn't there. My father came and he went, but I never knew where he was. See, you need a husband and a wife. You need a husband and a wife for a family. And you need flexibility. So you need rules that say, you don't get in rigid roles. The roles can rotate. Well, one day this kid may be the scapegoat because he blew up the television set. One day this kid may be. One day mom may be because she won't, do something. Or dad may be because he won't spring for money. Or whatever. In an unhealthy family, one person is going to be the designated scapegoat. So there's flexibility. It's like if you could think of the mobile and gentle motion. And there's a lot of fun in healthy families. The more functional a family is, the more there's flexibility. See, rigidity is mental illness. My way or the highway. No. Rigidity's freedom. I mean flexibility's freedom. The more choices I have, the freer I am. In working as a counselor, the more theories that I understood, the better I could be, because I had more choices. I didn't have to make you fit my theory so that I could feel comfortable about myself as a counselor. So the more flexibility that you have, the freer you are. So the roles are flexible and the rules are flexible in a healthy family system. There's a lot of love, there's a lot of respect. Now again, I don't think any family is totally functional or is totally dysfunctional. We're all on a scale somewhere of 1 to 100. I think that a lot of people, that really what functionality means is that you're dealing with what's going on. If there's sadness going on, you're dealing with it. If there's anger going on, there's ways to have conflict resolution. You can complete things. You can remedy conflict. I mean, I know of families where a parent dies and nobody ever talks about it. Nobody ever talks about it. So you're still carrying unresolved grief. Or daddy's alcoholism, what's called the family lie. Why does daddy sleep on the porch occasionally? Oh, a bad back. He has a bad back. He needs a hardwood floor. 2 in the morning on the porch? Yeah, well, he has this bad back. Oh, okay, I believe that. See, it's like you have this shared focus and this shared denial. And there's a vital lie in the family, the secret. The emperor has no clothes. And they're all going, yeah, God, that's fancy what he's wearing, isn't it? And finally, except the kid. The 2-year-old says, hey, Mama, he's naked. And it's the child until you're told, shh. See, all of a sudden you begin to have this loyalty. You begin to know what not to notice. You notice that there's no whatever people in this church. And say, shh, don't bring this up. Let's don't bring this up. It's the vital lie. And systems have their vital lies. Now, these kids who are preschoolers in a system like this need these models because sexual identity is going to be enormously important. This is one of the things. One part of the identity of the child is going to be sexual identity. Who am I? Who am I as a man and a woman? And this is true whether you're heterosexual or homosexual. That there's an identity that has to happen here. Now, for gay people or lesbian people, there's not much that we have in our literature for them. And, you know, this will freak people out, me even talking about it. But this is the most shamed group of people in our whole culture. And it's absolutely, I am sick of it myself. I'm sick of gay jokes. I'm sick of one group of people being continually shamed and ridiculed by people who are supposed to be holy people and are totally non-democratic and shaming. That all people need to have some models of relationship, of the polarity of relationship. The growth disorder here is that children get confused in their identity. They don't know who they are, or they get set up with some kind of sexual abuse. Now, I spent a previous program talking about a range of sexual abuse. I talked about touching in a sexual way, voyeurism, exhibitionism, inappropriate verbal remarks, boundary violations. I went through a number of those things. I want to focus in this program on emotional sexual abuse, or the spousification of children. But this is about 3 years old is the onset of where a lot of wounded kids are, where a lot of sexual abuse. I mentioned in an earlier program that there has been a tradition for a lot of years that children won't remember. Children won't remember. They won't know what's happening to them. So you can, and children get curious at 3 years old, and they do start wanting to know. And they do start asking questions. In fact, 3-year-olds are why? And they're experimenting with thinking and trying out little identities. And they're role-playing mom and dad. And they may do some sexual role-playing with same-age kids. So it's very, very important that they have good models. They see a marriage there. They see some kind of modeling there that's valuable for them so that they can see what intimacy looks like. Because they're sort of role-playing to prepare themselves. Now, sexual abuse is commonplace. Some statistics that I've been given, 1 out of 4 women by age 13 will be abused by somebody over 18, and 80% know they're offenders. Every workshop we do, it's just filled with men and women who have been sexually abused. It is astonishing to me the extent of sexual abuse, and it's something that we're naming. It's a demon that we're naming, and we're coming out of hiding with it. Now, this is what I call family enmeshment. I talked about this in an earlier program. When this relationship is bad, when dad's an adult child or mom's an adult child, let's say mom's a religious addict, mom mood alters with feelings of righteousness and moralizing and stays in her head pontificating to everybody in the family and reading text to people and telling them what they should and they ought and they must and dragging people to her style of religion. And Daddy enables this by not confronting it. Some of you are familiar with this, I see. What happens then when this relationship is bad, these kids get sucked into it. Nature abhors a vacuum, so when there's an intimacy dysfunction, the children get sucked into it. They get sucked into a marriage that goes out of balance. One of these kids may be the lost child. That is really, they have too many children. One of these kids may be the star that makes them proud of their marriage. Or if this is an alcoholic, mom's on pills and dad enables it. And nobody's there for the children. And mom and dad's marriage and family system is taken care of by a child that's a heroine, or a child that becomes a little parent to the brother, or this child may become a caretaker of one of the parents, or this kid may get in trouble all the time in order to take the heat off of this bad marriage. So you go to school and you talk to the principal, and you don't have to look at how lonely the marriage is. You don't have to look at how bad, how non-intimate this relationship is that you are in. And so these kids are losing their identity here. These kids are losing being who they are. You see, once you get set up, like I was a star, I was a little parent, I was a caretaker. I was my brother's caretaker. I was my mother's emotional husband because my dad was an alcoholic and he was gone early on. Now, I lost my reality early on. In a program that's going to come, I'm going to talk about what to do about these rigid roles. What we need to do about changing these rigid roles, because you'll continue to act those roles out all your life. You'll continue to stay loyal to that family system until you understand your origins. You know, one way to say it is, if you don't know your history, you are doomed to repeat it. And that people will get into these roles and not realize that they caretake, they're in a job, they're a doctor, they're a nurse, they're a therapist, they're studying to be a priest, they're studying to be a clerk, so they take care of people, that their job is taking care of people. Or maybe their job is being a star. Maybe somebody gets a job where you can kind of get lost and nobody knows who you are. You get lost in the assembly line. You can be invisible so you don't bother anybody. The scapegoat may continue to act that out, or the rebel may continue to rebel. In another program we talked about you conform or you rebel, and you may still be doing that, fighting the ghosts of mom and dad. Now, the worst part of this family dysfunction, and you see, as children, preschoolers, are forming their identity, this is where this stuff begins to impact. And unfortunately, by the time you hit preschool, often, this marriage has gotten worse and worse. That is, you know, if there is dysfunction in the marriage, it's gotten worse as you get to this point. So let's say, you know, by the time you get here, there is a real intimacy vacuum going on, and mom and dad's marriage has you know, it's become worsened. And let's say that dad is a lonely adult child who never got his needs met, and he's lonely, and he doesn't like his wife. So here's what he can do. He can become more involved with his daughter than his wife. And he can make his daughter his little princess. Or he can make his daughter his baby doll. Or he can make his daughter his caretaker in the place of mom. I've worked with situations where this mom and this dad, both adult children, very early on sort of set up a marriage of convenience. And this mom is going off on trips every summer, leaving this little daughter at home, basically to take care of her husband. And so she bonds with dad in this spousification, and she becomes his precious little one. But basically, what dad's lonely, there's a little child in here who's lonely, who needs somebody to be warm with, so he may put her in bed with him at night. His wife's gone all the time. Or maybe they don't even sleep in the same rooms anymore. This child is being non-physically sexually abused. And we have to understand this because it is incredibly common. As these two people stay together for the children, keep their marriage together for the children start getting sucked into this vacuum. Now, how could children know anything about this? They can't. How could they know it? In fact, she may feel very fortunate to have this wonderful dad who takes her with him every Saturday, spends a lot more time with her than he spends with her mother. Now, guess what that's going to set up between she and her mother? Conflict, jealousy. Her mother's wounded inner child may start hating her and treating her so, and she may not understand, why does mother treat me like this? You know, why do I have all this time? Why doesn't mother nurture me? Why is she never available for me? And so can you see the predicament this child is in? And this child can't know it. See, Alice Miller wrote a book called Thou Shalt Not Be Aware. And basically, this is what I've been saying in all the other programs, that you get abused as a child, that gate closes between the thinking and the emotional brain. The so-called ego defenses are automatic and unconscious, and you don't know what happened to you as an adult. Do you know when you start knowing what happened to you? When so-called toxic shame, codependency, adult-child issues manifest? When you get in a relationship. In adult relationships, this is when you start knowing you got problems. Yeah, does that make sense to you? See, and this is how we found out about adult children, the adult children of alcoholics. Suddenly people started saying, well, you know, Daddy sobered up when I was about 18. But I have trouble knowing what I feel. I lie when it's just as easy to tell the truth. I have trouble with authority people. I'm a love addict, or I'm a sex addict, or I keep hanging around with addicts, or I keep finding addicts for spouses. And my intimacy is just totally dysfunctional. See, and when we look back, we see that this child came out of this, or it can go this way. The little boy can be mom's surrogate spouse or mom's little man. I remember a scene at elementary school, picking up my son one day, listening to a mom with her son. And she was saying things like, "Did you miss me? Did you miss me? Who's your best girl? Who are you always going to love more than anyone?" And you know, this little kid's picking his nose, man. He doesn't know what, you know, he's being romanced. His mother is romanticizing their relationship. This lonely little girl and this lonely little boy are sucking these kids into their marriage and using them for their loneliness. You begin to see the implications of that. And then one other thing I want you to see is that this can happen this way. It can be dad and son. Dad's best buddy. Dad spends all his time playing baseball, never spends any time with his wife. This is a dysfunctional marriage, basically, where each parent sort of bonds with the kid of the same sex. This is mom's sorority sister. Mom tells her all kind of things. Tells her about sex. Tells her how rotten sex is with her dad. I've had clients where their mother told them this kind of stuff. Tells them about the sex life and how rotten sex is, and that you just have to get it over with, honey. Just ruining this little girl's own experience of her sexuality. See, or let's say this dad is going to make this son into an extension of himself. This dad wanted to be a lawyer, and he failed, or he feels like his life's a failure, so everything he does is to make this boy be a lawyer. So this kid becomes an extension of dad. This kid becomes dad's surrogate self to justify my life. Or this mom spends hours with this daughter, so it wants her to find a rich man. I had a female client where her mother was more in on her relationships. Her mother vicariously experienced every relationship. And this gal just went after very wealthy men. And basically, mom was in on it all the time. And I tried to help her to see that she had been sexually abused and was being sexually abused by this mom, that her mom was using her to try to have in her life what this woman had never had. So you begin to see how kids can be used, and that use is abuse. And when you have adult children for parents, see, these parents with this wounded inner child, they can't possibly be there for these children. There's no way. Now, I want to read you a poem. This was sent to me by one of the people that saw the family series. This is absolutely magnificent. It's a poem, and this is the letter that came to me. It said, "Dear Mr. Bradshaw, after watching several of your broadcasts, my inner child decided to write you a poem about the emotional abuse of playing baseball. I found the poem quite helpful myself, and since it's a pretty good poem, I thought I'd share it with you. You have given us all so much, I would like to give you something in return. Thank you, Craig Sanchez." Well, I want to read your poem, Craig, and I want to thank you for this poem. It's magnificent. Listen to this poem. It's called This Something Settled Matter in His Heart. And here's the way it goes. There's my dad. He's waiting for me outside, waiting to play where the broad sidewalk runs quietly along our flat-roofed corner house, the house where pumpkin orange brick peeks from beneath the crumbling white stucco. Fireflies are beginning to salvo and volley across the summer evening no man's land. There is a hush. It is as if the night has taken a deep breath and is holding it. He's got a baseball in one hand. He whacks it into his glove over and over again. It makes a clear, sharp, snapping sound like a whip. Suddenly he rocks back and launches the ball straight up into the deepening gloom. Up, up, up it goes, up past the lamppost, streaking up between the telephone wires and tree branches, up higher than any three-story building, apartment building next door. It's higher than that. Will it strike a bird? Catch it! Catch it, he bellows. I look up, craning my neck as far back as it will go. My feet are suddenly strangers to the ground. They swear they have never met before. These toes, this asphalt. I can't let my dad down. I'll catch it, I will. But I can't see it. 2 years from now, I'll finally get my glasses. But tonight, all I can do is squint into the darkness. Will it ever come down? Ever throbs my heart? I can see nothing. But I can smell something. I can smell the smooth new leather of my bright orange baseball glove as it slides around on my hand. It has a life of its own. It's a grown-up glove, a professional one, because my dad wants me to get used to the real thing from the beginning. No kid gloves for me. Oh, no. He's a swell dad to get it for me, even says so. I'm 5 years old. I have to squeeze all 4 fingers into the forefinger hole to keep it from falling off. My thumb is lost somewhere in a black hole. Tom Thumb's cave, I suppose. I run around in circles hoping that somehow, perhaps by being in perpetual motion, I will hear the ball when it comes down. I must never let my dad down, not once. I'm his big boy, and he wants me to be a baseball player just like he would have been if it hadn't been for that bad break. Did it hurt, Dad? That bad break? He's going to make a sacrifice and make sure that I make the big leagues. What a dad. The ball comes down and hits me on the head, and there's no hole for me, small as I am, to crawl into. You should have been born a girl. My father never played with me. Why did I waste all that money on that glove? You're such a sissy. I should have bought you a skirt instead. I fight back the shaming tears. Why do I have to cry now of all times? I can feel the pain from the bump on my head all the way to my heart. Dad, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Give me another chance. Please, I won't do it again. I promise. Please, Dad, please. All right. One more chance. A smile creeps across his face. But concentrate this time. Don't fail me. Once more, the ball flies up into the void. Run from it, birds. Don't get hit. Use your white wings to be safe. I'm so lucky to get a second chance. What a dad. I still can't see the ball. But I'll catch it somehow. I have to. Man, what a poem. What a poem. And what a statement. This isn't, none of this is about this child. Not one moment of this time spent with this little boy is about this little boy. This is about a dad with a wounded inner child who is contaminating his son with his own woundedness. So I hope you can see what a weighty matter in a bunch of issues this wounded child is. Now, one of the ways we work on getting to this wounded child is we write a letter in my workshops with our non-dominant hand. That is, if you're right-handed, you write the letter left-handed. If you're left-handed, you write it right-handed. And the idea of this letter is to write to your mom and dad and tell them what you needed from them that you never got. It's not a blaming letter. It's a statement. We have to demythologize our parents. You see, you can't heal your own wounded child as long as you're idealizing your parents. As long as you're thinking that it's you and not them. That, you know, here's this kid. How would this kid know this is abuse? He thinks it's a good deal. What a dad. He's given me a second chance. How does a kid know what abuse is? Listen to this statement. This is David Mura again, writing about abuse. If only the child could have escaped, but he could not. The world of his abuse was the world of his family. The child's inability to pull away from the world of abuse was not merely caused by the presence of physical force or their ignorance of choice. He could not defend himself because he could not name the abuse. He could not put a name on it. How would he know what abuse is? You see, so one of the things that we are doing in this series is naming abuse. One of the things I did in the family series is name abuse, because the wounded inner child in us couldn't know. What we grew up in, we thought was normal. So I have people write these letters. Wayne Kritzberg, my friend Mike Falls, Lucia Capiciani. These are techniques that a lot of therapists use. It's not blaming. The intention is not relevant in my work. It's like they were backing out of the driveway and they ran over your leg and you've been limping for 40 years. And you don't know why. So you've got to make the abuse real. Fritz Perls said, nothing changes till it becomes what it is. And so in this exercise, you're going to see people reading the letters that they've written to each other. They'll be discharging as they read. They'll be in sadness. And then when the exercise is over, they'll validate. Now, validation is a very important part of inner child work. See, because you couldn't know it was abuse. You couldn't know that the outrage was justified because there was no allies. Who came to you and said, hey, that was terrible what you went through. That was terrible what your father did to you with that new glove. Who did you have that could have helped you with that? You didn't have anybody. And so there's a great deal of pain. We had a man in our treatment center confront the staff recently. And Kip Flock, who you saw earlier, said, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. The man started sobbing. He said, never have I confronted authority figures who validated my experience. So one of the very important parts of this work is people coming together in non-shaming support groups and getting validation as we tell our stories to each other. Oh, that was terrible what you went through. I feel anger. And that's what you're going to hear in this piece that you're going to watch. These people have been working, they've written their letters, and so let's watch this. I want you to write a letter, but I want you to this time with your non-dominant hand. And you write, Dear Mom and Dad, here's what I needed that I didn't get. This is not an accusing letter, because remember, we're not blaming. This is a letter that's saying to your little wounded inner child, you're beautiful, you're lovable, there's nothing wrong with you, you just didn't get what you needed. And you need that validated for you. When you're finished, I want you to read your letter to the group. Just read it as tenderly as you can. Dear Mom and Dad. And then when you're finished with the letter, let each person in the group give you a feeling response.
I need to know that I was okay for not having a dad. I need to know it wasn't my fault. I need to know that I didn't make him leave. I needed to be a kid. I needed to be able to play, and there was a lot I needed.
I'm so sorry that you didn't have the opportunity to know your father. And I'm real angry that your mom didn't spend the time with you to try to explain the fact that you were precious and you were meant to be there. Because you were.
I don't have any memories of you being around. No memories of you playing with me. Dad, I need your time. Dennis,
visualize a little boy jumping up and down saying, I need your time, I need your time. Wanting that so much, I can really hear that hurt, that lost feeling. When you were talking to your dad, I just heard a tremendous amount of sadness. I didn't hear anger at your father, but I heard a lot of sadness that he wouldn't come home and be with you, and I think it's real sad that you don't have any memories of him at all, and that he couldn't just take a few minutes and play with you. That's a big loss for you.
Dad, please play with me, hold me and tell me I'm pretty, and that you love me, and that I'm as special to you as a boy would be. I've tried to change into a boy, but I'm still a girl.
Mom and Dad, I needed to feel and express my feelings and have that be okay. I needed to feel like I was basically just like everybody else. I needed to know that it was okay just to be a kid. Dad, I needed to know it was okay to be less than perfect. Mom, I needed to know it was okay to be a male.
Dad, why are you not here? The only way that I know that you've ever even been here in this house is the snack that's left on top of the trunk. Every day I have a treat there from you, but where are you? But now, how come you don't want to come here? How come you don't want to be with Mom and me? Why? Do you hate Mom? Do you hate me? Our house is so pretty, and Mom is so pretty. But how come you're not here? I wish you would talk to me. Why don't you all talk? Why don't you ask about me? Why are you never there, but everything else seems and looks to be so perfect? Susan.
I felt your pain and fear of your daily life, and then the anger coming through and being so confused and frustrated.
I heard your pain and your loneliness and a lot of confusion. What did I do wrong?
I feel like in some way that you blame yourself. Like if you only loved me more, if you would laugh. It's not your fault. It made me real sad.
You can see how powerful that is. I could experience my sadness. I saw a lot of you experiencing sadness. Michelin, the little gal, that shared first, that I didn't make him leave, that it wasn't my fault that my dad was there. See, children will take that on. Children are egocentric. I'm responsible for the marriage. I'm responsible. And did you hear the witnessing to the no father? See, children know that what you give time to is what you love. They have no time for me. And we're told that, well, your dad really loves you, your mom really loves you, but they have no time for you. So that pain is there in the child. And this just powerful, powerful expression of it. And then Karen, who talks about, you know, can I be a girl? Is it okay to be a girl? And Andy, is it okay to be a boy, Mom? You see why I have those affirmations in there all through these exercises, that this is sexual abuse. When you're sex, you're being communicated that something's wrong with your sex. It's not okay to be a girl. It's not okay to be a boy. And then this piece at the end with Susan, where she talks about the only way she knew her dad was there are these treats that are left on the counter. You know, my assumption, this is a workaholic father. And we think, you know, we still laugh about this. You see the pain in that little girl who's sitting there reading that letter. You know, these are the things she's saying. I wished you would talk to me. Why don't you want to be with me? Do you hate me? Do you hate Mom? And then you hear the validations. You hear them getting the validations. And see, what that does is it helps that lonely little child to know that I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. That this pain, this ache that I'm experiencing, I'm not crazy. That other people, and when people sit in small groups like that and share, see, there's a connecting of the inner child with each other. We can connect with each other's inner child. Because the child has no allies. The child is lonely. There's nobody to talk to. So that's what's powerful. And those of you who are watching this, talk to somebody about it. Write a letter. Get somebody you love and trust and share it with them. And then for all of you, those watching and you, just close your eyes again. Let's give our preschooler these affirmations. These are the things that little 3-year-old in you needed to hear. So just take a few deep breaths. And then just focus on your normal breathing. Just let yourself be there with your normal breathing. And once again, let yourself go back in time to some place that you remember where you lived. And see a little preschool child, 6 years old, 5 years old, whatever. And even if you can't see them clearly, just have a sense they're there. And then let them be seeing you. Just float into their little body and let them see you. And hear them, hear you saying to them, it's okay to think for yourself. It's okay to have your own identity. It's okay to find out the difference between boys and girls. It's okay to be a boy. It's okay to be a girl. It's okay to be gay or lesbian. It's okay for you to be different, to have your own view of things. It's okay to imagine things without being afraid that they'll come true. I'll help you separate fantasy from reality. It's okay to ask for what you want. It's okay to ask questions if something confuses you. And listen, little John, Mary, Susie, whoever, you're not responsible for your daddy's loneliness, for your mother's pain. You're not responsible for your father not being there, or your mother not being there. You're not responsible for their marriage or their marriage problems. You're not responsible for any of that. You're just a little child. And it's just okay for you to be you and for you to be a little child. And just for a moment, be the grown-up you and just hold that little child. Just hold him in your arms. And feel a nice connection with them and tell them that you can be there for them. And that you can be there for them whenever they need you. And then just let yourself take a nice deep breath. And as you exhale, just very slowly open your eyes. Now, in the work that I do, in my workshops, we do this for a lot longer. We spend more time with it. But I just want to give you a flavor of it. And I want to give you a sense of the most important thing I know, that each one of us has a right to be the very one we are. The greatest therapist that ever lived, in my opinion, was a man named Milton Erickson. And Milton Erickson had no theory of human nature. He treated 20 bedwetters, and he treated them all differently. He never treated anybody the same because he said that everybody is different. One of his famous cases was a woman in Wisconsin that had been depressed for years. And nobody had been able to help her. She had been to all kind of doctors and therapists. And Erickson came in, they flew him in to her house. He spent 30 minutes with her and he said, here's what you do. You buy about 5,000 African violet bulbs and start growing African violets. And whenever there's a birth in your church, because he had found out that the woman went to church every morning, you send an African violet. And when there's a baptism, you send an African violet. She was in an Episcopal church. And when there's a marriage, you send an African violet. And when there's a celebration of any kind, you send them an African violet. And he left. Now you can imagine this wealthy family flew him in, waiting for the ace psychiatrist, to treat this involutional melancholia, which is what this stuff is described in the literature. And he tells her to grow African violets and to send them to people at church. Well, within about 6 months, there was an article in the Wisconsin paper about the African violet lady. About all these people that had begun to go over to her house and see her and visit her. And in the follow-up of this case, of course, her depression was gone. See, what Erickson did is he went in there, he took his hat off as a psychiatrist. He didn't have to play psychiatrist. He didn't have to hide behind his therapist mask or anything. He met her at her map of the world. He went into her reality. And he said, what's going on with this? Where is there energy in this woman? Where there's energy, she goes to church every day. And he had looked around the house, and he had seen these African violet plants. And he said, she gardens. So he took those two things, the energy of going to church and the African violets, and he put them together. He created a context that would allow her to behave in such a way that there would be a response to her, and there would be a great possibility of her coming out of this depression. And his files are filled. In fact, in people who follow Milton Erickson, you can just hear Milton Erickson stories. Another famous one was a guy that wanted to go into orbit, thought he was destined to go into orbit. So Erickson had him sit up on a mountain in Phoenix with water and canteens and supplies. And after months went down, the guy came to him one day and said, I'm getting kind of tired of this. And he left, and he had a job, and years later he wrote him and said, I think I was delusional in those days. So this is this great stuff that Erickson did. And Erickson's the example. This is what Erickson writes. Every person's map of the world is unique as their thumbprint. There are no two people alike. There are no two people who understand the same sentence the same way. Now that is the kind, see that lets me know that it is possible that we can meet each other at our own maps of the world. That you can take that little preschooler in you and tell them that there's never been anybody like them. We could go back millions of years and we'd never find anybody like them. And there never will be again. And that we can tell that little preschooler that they're not responsible for their parents' marriage. We can tell them all the kinds of things that I just encouraged you to tell them. That they don't have to carry their mother's sadness or pain. Some of you saw the program on Original Pain, where Rhonda gave her mother her sadness and pain back. Where that mother's wounded child tries to set the child up to take care of their disappointment. Or that Sanchez doesn't have to take care of his father's need to be an ace baseball player. That each one of us has a right to our own life. And for some of us, it's going to be very hard. The more dysfunctional your family is, the more difficult it is to leave it. Because the more dysfunctional it is, the more you never got to separate or have your own reality. See, one of the problems of enmeshment is that the more you are enmeshed, the less you've ever been allowed to separate or be who you are. So we have the difficulty of becoming ourselves. It is very hard to leave dysfunctional families. That's why you need a support group, and we'll talk about that later on. Well, love that preschooler in you. And join me again next time when we look at the school-age child and we reclaim that wounded inner school-age child. God bless you all.
And remember the child